Hello and welcome to Fiction Fans, a podcast where we read books and other words too. I'm Lily.
And I'm Sarah.
And tonight we'll be discussing from these dark abodes. Nope, I still also need the author's name.
Lyndsie Manusos.
Thank you. From These Dark Abodes by Lyndsie Manusos. But first, what's something great that happened recently?
I got to actually do a little bit of coding today, which was fun because I've spent the last 4 or 5 months knee deep in the minutia of a particular SQL query, which has been miserable. So it was fun to do something not that.
Sounds like it. I'm glad. Does that mean you're kind of done with that then and you can move on in your work life, or are you going to have to go back to it?
What it means is that I couldn't get it working. No one could get it working. So I gave up. But it is still a ticket that I would like to solve at some point, if that ever is possible.
My fingers are crossed for you. We harvested 3 beautiful bouncing baby pumpkins from our garden this week. They are the only 3 we're going to get. We planted 3 pumpkin plants and got 3 pumpkins. 1 from each. They're maybe 2 fists, a little bit bigger than that. Not very big. I do think they're the eating kind, but I don't remember. I got them a very long time ago. And they're all the goofiest shapes. I love it.
I mean, at the very least, they're decorative, regardless of whether or not you eat them.
Yes. Oh, I'm going to eat them before they go bad, even if it's a mistake. I'm not going to not eat something I grew. What are you drinking tonight?
In deference to From These Dark Abodes, I have a small thimbleful of brandy. And in deference to the 90-degree heat outside, I have a cold cider.
The best of both worlds. I also got brandy because there's a lot of brandy in this book.
There is a lot of brandy in this book. Also, boy, this is terrible brandy.
I also have terrible brandy.
I'm pretty sure. So this is from not to interrupt you, which I realize I'm doing. Sorry. I know everyone's desperate to hear about my terrible brandy. It's from a mason jar I had in my house. I'm pretty sure that it comes from brandy that is sold in a plastic jug in very large quantities that I use to make vanilla extract. So not actually something enjoyable to drink.
I'm pretty sure that's the intention for the brandy I purchased as well. But Safeway only has 2 price points, and it was $12 or $80. And I was not going to spend $80 for being able to say, I'm drinking brandy. So I got the very cheap stuff. I thought, well, if I mix it with something, maybe it will taste better. So I found a recipe. It was called a bacchanalia, which I thought was also very fitting.
That is appropriate.
A, for the fun revelries, fun, for some people, fun revelries in this novella. And B, for the Greco-Roman mythology reference. So, appropriate, up and down, every way. Doesn't taste that much better.
What else is in there besides terrible brandy?
Red wine, honey, and lemon juice. Lemon.
That does not sound like a good recipe. I'm going to be honest.
I think it is a good concept, and if I had used good brandy, it would taste fine. Or decent brandy. But the red wine and the honey and the lemon juice do not cover up the bad brandy.
None of those things feel like they go together.
I mean, sangria. Sweet red wine with fruit in it.
Yeah, but I'm not pouring honey into my sangria. Or lemon juice. I'm putting lemon slices in, maybe, but...
Same. Okay, you're saying that if it was a lemon slice, that would be fine? No, that's the same flavor profile.
But I don't know.
The lemon is probably the best part. The honey is because I didn't have agave, which is what the recipe actually called for.
Mm.
But I don't think that'd be... I mean, it's just to sweeten it. Whatever. Anyway, I have made my bed and will now drink it.
I'm sorry. That's not a good face to like
it. kind of tastes like medicine. I want to like it. I don't.
That's very unfortunate.
Oh well. Have you read anything good lately that we are not about to discuss at length?
I started reading The Mimicking of Known Successes by Malka Older, which is a sci-fi, I think it's novella, given that I'm on chapter 4 and I'm 21% of the way through according to my Kindle app. It's, I guess, maybe a little bit cozy murder mystery solving. I'm not really far enough into it to tell you if that's for sure the plot, but very, very vibey so far.
Nice.
So I'm enjoying it.
Lovely. Submissions technically counts.
Excellent thing to be reading.
And so nothing that I'm going to discuss at length in the moment, but I have actually been reading and I wanted to brag about it.
That's always a nice feeling.
So, speaking of vibes, from these dark abodes,
Excellent
amazing.
vibes.
Perfect. It's creepy, it's fall, there's skeletons. I did just make wow, I almost called you by my name.
I mean, we have been accused of being the same person before, but
it's getting to me. I did just make Sarah listen to the entirety of the Spooky Scary Skeletons song just to get us in the mood.
Which really does feel like an accurate representation of some of the skeleton shenanigans in this book.
It's a little more whimsical. I would say the skeleton shenanigans in this book are more edgy and sexy.
Yes.
They're pouring brandy on each other and interlacing their bones. And
yes. I actually really enjoyed this book.
Incredible.
Yes. I'm very pleased that we had a spooky season book that I really liked. I was not expecting that.
I should have known anything with bones would be good for you.
It's true. I really like bones. And this was not really what I would call scary. Like, it was atmospheric, and I get why it would maybe be considered, I wouldn't call it horror, but it's definitely spooky, right?
Yeah. I am sort of on the same page as you. It's graphic. It's ooey gooey. There are some pretty detailed descriptions of people unzipping their skins and like glooping out of them.
Yes.
I think the beginning called it body horror, and I'm very curious if that's referring to those unzipping scenes or the lengthy discussion of feeling trapped and unright, is that a word? Incorrect in your body and wanting to escape it and not being able to. That sort of, gosh, I never remember which one's which between dysphoric and dysmorphic. One of those. That kind of body horror, I think, pushes this truly into horror for me, just because of that, the dread and the inescapability of it. Similarly, our two main characters, are we going to go with Letha? Letha.
I will follow your lead in this, because you're the one saying her name first.
Well, my excuse is that no one knows how to pronounce ancient Greek, right? Letha and Petunia are similarly also trapped in this spooky house. Oh, spooky magic house? Very atmospheric. Maybe
Very
too
atmospheric.
Awesome to be horror.
Yeah, I'd like... Honestly, it seemed there's the conservatory where it's always raining. There's the library or the piano room where it's always sunny. There's the library. Like, yeah, you have to clean up after some spooky skeletons. But, and they, to be fair, they didn't seem like very nice people, even when they were non-skeletal. But it just seemed like a really cool house.
I wasn't going to go so far as they should have enjoyed being there. because the group of immortals, the people who shed their skin and dance around as skeletons every night, we're just constantly harassing them.
Oh yeah,
sexually, physically, mentally, emotionally.
I don't. To be clear, I am not saying they should have enjoyed their time there. Like, it is very understandable why they didn't. I'm just saying the house was pretty cool, and as a reader who is not in that situation, I appreciated it.
See, if I had been Arinys, who was the master of the house, then A, it would have been a better time for everyone because I'm a nicer person than Arinys is. And then it would have been a great house to be in. Speaking of these names that I'm probably butchering, there's a lot of really fun mythology, like little Easter eggs in here.
There was.
Even if I don't know how to pronounce them.
Well, the good thing about reading a book, not so much about having a book podcast wherein you have to talk about said book, but the good thing about reading a book is you don't actually have to pronounce things out loud until you get to the podcast part. There's a thing that I want to say that's very much a spoiler, so I'm not going to say it yet, along the lines of the mythology in this book. But yes, I really enjoyed it, and it came to play in ways that I wasn't expecting, which was also fun.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, I was going to say about Lethe and Petunia, though, they are also trapped in this house, and that dread, the inescapability of it, the awful situation they're in, and then also being taunted by being told it was their choice, just the cherry on top, that, I think, also helps push it into true horror for me. It's weird because there...
No, continue on.
It's weird because there was ooey gooey gore, but that was not the horror element, in my opinion.
I think that for me, the ooey gooey gore and the way that Petunia and Lethe are trapped and, as you say, taunted about it do make it horror, but because of just like the atmospheric writing, it went back to spooky vibes that I really enjoyed.
You can't declare that it's not horror just because you liked it.
No, I'm not.
Think... I liked it, therefore it wasn't horror.
Okay, I guess maybe that is kind of what my argument boils down to. But it just, like, it didn't... How to phrase it? I was able to remove myself from the horror, and so it felt atmospheric rather than like...
It wasn't immediate.
Yeah.
There is always that aspect when it comes to fantasy, or I think
it was very lush.
Yeah,
which is not something that I tend to associate with a lot of horror novels or like horror stories.
Feel kind of gothic to me in that way, because it was so location dependent. And I mean, just the image of a decaying mansion. I mean,
yes.
If that's not gothic, what is?
It felt very gothic. I agree.
I don't remember what I was... Oh, I was going to say about genre. There is a line with... I'm going to call it genre horror. Right? Because horror can be in any other genre, right?
Right.
If you get too abstract with it, it makes it less, oh god, that could happen to me. Which I think in this case, you are finding a bonus because it made it less scary to read. But that also means it is less scary because you're like, well, I'm not trapped in a mansion with a bunch of immortals who take their skin off, so...
But I think also you could make this... No, scratch that. Never mind. I take it all back.
That's not to say that you can't be scared by a situation that doesn't apply to you. I just think that there is an extra layer that it adds a layer when you don't relate to the situation as much.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that probably does add to why I enjoyed it so much, because I don't like the immediacy of a lot of horror, even if I know that something like that is never going to happen to me in like a horror movie or a horror novel. There is still a higher chance that it could.
Yeah. The ones that make you scared in your own home, right? That's a very different experience than this is a scary concept and these characters are going through a bad time, but that's not me going through a bad time.
Yes. But also I just like bones.
You like bones. And there were some fun velvet dresses in this book. A fun velvet dress. Okay, there was one fun velvet dress in this book.
There was a lot of fashion, actually, because all of the people, when they were not being skeletons, had fancy outfits.
Mm-hmm. Did make me want to party with the skeletons a little bit.
I don't know if I wanted to party with them because it sounded a little too orgiastic for me.
They were only bones, though, Sarah.
Right, but I'm
no,
still
it was definitely
not
sexy.
into
You're
that.
right. You're right. It was definitely sexual. In fact,
But
you could even say they were boning.
that's it. You're canceled from the podcast.
Can't cancel me for a pun.
No, especially because I love a bad pun.
Yeah.
That's it. You're promoted.
All right. Did we find a horror novel for the non-horror fans? Maybe. If you like bones and gothic vibes and want to read this while you're in a library in the rain.
Yes, if you like something that's spooky and atmospheric, this is a good novella for you.
There's also some very tender longing between Lethe and Petunia.
There's a lot of longing. Yes, if you want to read longing.
Specifically longing.
Yes, very specifically longing.
Which is trailing awful close to spoilers, so maybe we should go over there. This episode of Fiction Fans is brought to you by Fiction Fans.
That's us. We really appreciate our patrons because otherwise we fund this podcast entirely ourselves.
Patrons can find weekly bonus content, monthly exclusive episodes, and they get free access to our biannual zine, Solsticia.
You can find all of that and more at patreon.com/fictionfanspod. Thank you for all of your support.
So take it away.
Okay, so going back to your comment about mythology.
I know I said Easter eggs, but that's because it was the non-spoiler section.
I absolutely fucking loved that Lethe turned out to be an actual river. I was expecting Manusos to do something with her name, because how could you not? Like, I would have been really disappointed if it had turned out to be a nothing burger.
Well,
but
she named a character with no memories Lethe. Like,
yeah,
she already did something from the introduction.
I was expecting there to be a little bit more than just that.
Yeah.
But I wasn't expecting her to be an actual river, like the actual river. And that was just, I loved it. It was perfect.
I also was like, okay, Erinyes, that's the revenge ones, right? Revenge, but like in a justice-y way.
I think that they're the Furies.
Yeah, and they get revenge in a justice-y way.
Do the Furies get justice-y revenge?
I'm pretty sure they do. That's like if a man beat his wife, the Furies might go after him.
I just remembered the revenge bits.
Okay.
Not the justice-y bits, but
or I guess revenge from a celestial standpoint, not like some rando could like, I curse you with revenge. And like the Furies weren't for personal squabbles, they were for revenge on a cosmic level.
Right.
Yeah, anyway. So I was like, okay, neat. She's the awful mistress. So what did Lethe do to deserve this? Right, was where my head was at. Because I assumed it was allegorical in nature. And then, like you, absolutely delighted. Yeah, and then they're like, oh, Lethe and Petunia. And Petunia has some memories, but Lethe has none. And I was like, oh, gee. I guess I know why she named her Lethe. Nope.
Nope. Nope.
She did the fucking thing. It was great.
Yeah. Like I think that's the thing, right? If it had just been that Letty had no memories, that's low-hanging fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that there was something more and it was this something was excellent. I loved it.
Yes. So it's implied that the other immortals, the skeletal partygoers, occasionally skeletal partygoers, are also mythological figures. I did not bother to look up who they are, but I
I
assume they're real ones.
I also did not actually look up who they were.
Cool. Good conversation.
Yeah, that would involve research and actually, investigating things, and we don't do that for this podcast. This is not that kind of podcast.
I love the idea, though, that these Greek mythology figures had said, we're going to make our own underworld with blackjack and hookers and skeletons and brandy. So they do. They make this weird little bubble universe. And then other underworld mythological figures from other cultures were like, we also don't want to be underlings anymore. We're going to come hang out with you guys.
It's such a neat concept, right? That these mythological figures are tired of doing what they're known for in mythology and they want to retire.
And it's a very poetic setup for a book that is about being trapped in so many different ways, right? We're introduced to Letty and Petunia, who are trapped in this house and forced to be servants for these people who are awful to them. And then, of course, the joy of dancing as a skeleton is that you're free from your body. And there's a line towards the beginning of the book that I highlighted and wrote thesis statement. It was like, everyone has a reason for wanting to leave their own body. And I was like, yeah. Well, some probably more extreme than others, but yeah,
Well, and I mean, they talk a little bit about how Arinya like literally bleeds from every pore of her body or whatever
Mm-hmm.
constantly all the time. So when that's your physical state, yeah, it makes sense that you want to just be bones.
Well, but also in a more metaphorical for regular people way too.
Well, yes, that too,
Well,
but
that's
like it works on multiple levels.
yes, and they're trapped in their roles as these mythological figures, and they want change. And then we find out later that they recruited, quote unquote, recruited Petunia, who was just a mortal. She was just a regular lady, but she was going through some sort of postpartum experience and dealing with the effects that having a child had on her body. And so I think that ties it into the more human experiences and less mythological ones really
Yes,
nicely.
yes. Petunia is the link between all of that.
I did have one problem with this novella.
What
At
was
one
your
point,
problem?
at one point, Letty and Petunia are looking for Slovachka because he goes missing. And they have to go into the cellar, which is like spooky. Don't go down there. Even the skellies don't go down there. And there's a bunch of rats, and they find the rats eating his bones. And I'm sorry, rats are precious babies and don't deserve to be scary. How dare?
I don't know. I think rats can be precious babies and can also deserve to be scary.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Those are not opposite statements.
you're right. I think that is a section of the book that didn't work for me personally because I like rats. And so all of the descriptions of them like skittering around and carrying around femurs, I think might have been spookier to a different reader.
I mean, I don't know. I guess that was probably the bit that I found this in this book, but I don't know if I would say it was that scary.
See, conversely, I found Letty and Petunia huddling together in the back of a closet just like hoping that the revelers don't notice them so that they can be left alone for a goddamn minute. And knowing that this was all they had to look forward to for the rest of eternity was the scariest.
I didn't find that scary in the sense that it didn't give me like the chills. No, that's not the right way to put it. I think that's the most horrifying aspect, but it wasn't what scared me.
To use the shorthand I've been using, it freaked me out the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just that moment of begging for respite and knowing that it's only a matter of time. Like that dread and that the tension there was very compelling to me.
It's such a depressing image, right?
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that you're going to be there day after day after day doing the same thing and there's no hope, no escape. It's just tragic.
And that's also when we get some of the sweetest moments between Lethe and Petunia. Their relationship was tragic.
It was complex. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, gonna say Lethe betrays Petunia in the end, but actually Lethe had betrayed Petunia before the book, but because of memories, it's revealed that it happened at the end. And so that's when it's dealt with.
Yeah, I don't think that Lethe betrays Petunia at the end because it was essentially a different Lethe. You know, it was her before her memories were taken away, when she had full knowledge of what she was doing, and the Lethe in the book is dealing with the consequences of her actions, but she wouldn't make that choice again.
Well, it's interesting too because then at the very end we have a new Lethe who has both experiences. And is it that Lethe's fault? I would say so, because she remembers doing it now and the reasoning and all of that. She just also has all of the memories of not having those memories and having it just be her and Petunia against the world. And that, I mean, you were right. It's complex, but also very sad. Because Lethe loses her, basically, because of that thing that she had done. But it wasn't her who had done it. Oh, it's a lot.
But I don't think that she would ever have had her, really, because Petunia, even before Petunia knows that Lethe is one of the skeletons, is still longing for her child and her life that she had. And I don't think that she would ever have really been with Lethe until, or she wouldn't have been satisfied being with Lethe until she had answers.
In a stable, long-term, real-world relationship way, I agree with you. They were stuck in a horror novel and had literally no one else but each other. She has Petunia in that sense. Like, they're the only two people in the world, basically. Other than the awful skellies who torment them all the time.
It is the two of them against the world. Yes.
She has her full attention, at least, even if she doesn't have her heart.
Yes.
It does kind of get glossed over. So, Lethe was one of the skellies. She's actually the one who creates the whole house. She had to kidnap Petunia for some reason. It was part of the magic. The book doesn't get into specifics, but I didn't need it to.
Yeah, it's fine. We don't need to know how it works. It just works.
Yeah. But this, I do like that they're just the skellies now. It's true. The people who unzip their skins to dance around as skeletons every night are so horrible to Lethe when she doesn't have her memories. And then when they realize she started to get them back, they're horrified. And then when she has them all the way back, they're like, okay, great, you're one of us again. And it's like, no, you were awful to her. How is that just erased now? She still has the memories of you being awful to her,
So for me, I read that as they are trying to be nice so that they can gloss their way out of it, right? And Lethe is so, I don't want to say overwhelmed, but like kind of reeling with the shock of the last like 12 hours that she doesn't have time to address it because this all happens in a very short period of time. And so if they had been in that situation for longer, I suspect it would have been dealt with. But I can kind of understand just going with the flow while you're trying to figure everything out.
I mean, you're right. And it didn't bother me from a storytelling perspective. I would have liked it to be dealt with a little bit more. Like, I would have liked for them to have gotten to the point where it had to be dealt with. Because you're right, from a character perspective, everyone's actions make sense. It just bothered me deeply. And maybe that is just part of the unsettling nature of this story, where being stuck in a situation where everyone's acting like it's fine and you kind of have to go along with it even though it's not fine. It was a lot and I didn't like it. But that doesn't
it
mean it was
was
bad.
it was definitely a lot. I mean, I don't think that they could have gotten to a point where it was dealt with just given the way that events turn out. Like right after she gets her memories back, basically, the king of the underworld comes a knocking, and the people who are not part of the Greek pantheon peace out because they're like, we don't want to deal with this. We thought this was a stable place, and it's not. So we're going to go find a new one. And Petunia gets put back and doesn't remember anything and has a somewhat happy ever after. So there's not really a time for Lethe to address the everyone's actions towards her.
I mean, that's just because this is a novella, though. Talia could have not stolen Irenese's power for 24 goddamn hours. Like,
that's true.
there's no reason why Talia needed to do that so immediately, except because the book was almost over.
That's true. If it was a novel, yes, there maybe could have been space to deal with that. But I don't know. I feel like it was perfect as a novella. I don't know if it could have sustained a novel's word count.
No, I'm not saying it should have been stretched out into a novel. I'm just saying there could have been one more chapter. The conclusion, the apex, the confrontation. Is there another C word for that I'm forgetting?
Culmination?
Maybe that's it. That didn't have to happen all at once. It could have been drawn out a little bit. But that's only because that situation made me so upset and I wanted to see some resolution there. And you're not always going to have an emotionally fulfilling ending in a horror story. And that's okay. I am just upset.
I don't think yeah, I don't conversely, I don't think having that resolution would have been satisfying
I
in
wanted
in a horror novel. Like I really don't think that it would have worked.
counterpoint. Petunia gets an emotional release because she finally stands up for herself. And that was very good, and I liked it quite a bit. I just wanted Lethe to also have one of those.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like it makes sense that Lethe doesn't.
Yeah, it does. It just makes me upset. Sarah, this is a
Okay.
horror novel. I am upset.
Okay.
That doesn't make it a bad book.
Okay. I'll stop trying to argue.
I'm not going to be less upset just because it was fine writing.
I think it was perfect the way it was. It didn't need that. But
I needed it. The book
you're
didn't
allowed,
need it. I needed it.
you're allowed to be upset about that.
Speaking of me being upset, okay, so Petunia gets put back. There's some kind of hand wavy. Her husband suddenly realizes he abandoned her with a newborn, which I guess he didn't figure out before, even though he had. So he's back, gives her some goddamn help. It's sort of implied that she is handling her postpartum situation better.
She's less depressed. She has more of a support system,
Yeah,
so she actually can deal with things.
exactly. She has resources.
Yeah.
And then it ends with a knock at the door. Was it Lethe?
I mean, it was certainly Lethe was there in some way.
Yeah, there's kind of like a spooky breeze that we're supposed to think is maybe her, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that the Petunia just being mad at Lethe forever is also upsetting, but in a way that feels very satisfying. I
I
can't
mean,
explain why that's different.
well, but it also makes sense because Petunia loses all of her memories of this place, so she can't not be mad at Lethe.
Yeah, Sarah, we've gone over this. All of
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
All of the characters are acting perfectly rationally for the world that they are in. Some of it makes me very angry,
Okay.
and some of it doesn't.
I'll stop trying to rationalize things. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. It's a very well done book. The characters are all very consistent. They make choices and take actions that fit into the world that has been built. Some of them are deeply upsetting. And the ones that are, for some reason, don't make sense. Because that's just me, and that's okay. That's not me criticizing the book in any way.
Yep. We're allowed to be mad when people make decisions in books that we understand but we don't like.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, and just not being able to see things. But it's, I mean, that's life, right? You don't always get the emotional catharsis of confrontation.
Yeah. I mean, and also things don't always wrap up neatly. Like
And
in one sense this book does. Petunia gets back, everything works out more or less, well for her anyway. But there are all of these, like you say, confrontations that don't happen, and that some people at least would like to see happen.
I mean, from Petunia's perspective, she has severe postpartum depression, blinks out of existence for maybe eternity, maybe no time at all, goes through some awful experiences, learns to stick up for herself, and then is brought back in the exact moment where she left, and then also everything is better now. And she has no memory of the bad things. So, like, for Petunia, this is a great book. Everything's coming up roses for her. Or Petunias, I guess I should say.
It's a great ending. I wouldn't say it's a great book for her because she did still have to go through,
But
you
she
know.
doesn't remember any of it, so who cares?
She doesn't remember any of it, but the Petunia who goes through it cared quite a bit.
Yeah, but the Petunia who lives on Earth, great book.
Yes. Okay. That's fair. The
And all of
the Petunia at the end of the book, great book. Petunia at the beginning of the book, not so great book.
And it really is the immortal mythological figures who it all and have it all yanked away.
Yeah, I mean, they're back at where they started, basically.
Except for Rosemary and her crew. They get out.
Yeah.
But Arini's and Lethe, and a couple of them get killed for realsies, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. And I think my deep emotional discomfort is why I'm like, no, this is a horror novel, though.
that makes sense.
And
I mean,
it's not.
I think through this conversation, I agree that it's a horror novel.
It's definitely not on the Clive Barker end of the spectrum.
Yeah. It's firmly in the horror stories I can tolerate and enjoy spectrum.
No one aspect of it is like too overwhelmingly intense, but it has enough of them put together that it is definitely horror.
Yeah. And to be fair, people who don't like bones and don't like horror maybe wouldn't enjoy this as much. But like,
it's true.
I did work at the bone room, so I've got a pretty high bone tolerance.
Be an anthropology nerd, and then you'll like this book, even if you don't like horror.
Yes.
But no, I like, other than the goopy ooey gooey skeleton skins, the book is mostly just like, it's not just gothic and atmospheric, but that is just a very different reading experience of vibes. But then it does have those graphic elements. It's just because they're so separate, it doesn't feel like they add up against each other, but they do.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the actual horror is emotional, in that the characters go through a lot of like emotional trauma, but it's not psychological, right? Like it's not the book trying to freak you out, and even the ooey gooey bits are not really gory in the sense that it's not violent.
Yeah, that was something I wanted to say. Part of the reason why the skeleton parts aren't scary, in my opinion, is because the act of becoming a skeleton is actually quite empowering for those characters.
Yes.
Them shedding their skin and becoming skeletons is a triumphant thing. And so, while it is graphic and ooey gooey, in every sense of the word, and it's horrifying for Lethe and Petunia to witness, like you said, it's not violent. It's not an aggressive thing.
Yeah.
It's just bodies are gross. Sorry.
Yeah.
The insides are on the outside.
And so I think all of that, like, coupled with that really lush gothic atmosphere, tempers it a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes it more bearable, which I understand.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we got a book in for Spooky Month that you didn't hate.
I am too. I don't actually remember what we read for Spooky Month last year, but, and to be fair, there were stories in Sinophasia that I quite liked, but they were all, I think, a lot spookier than this. Oh, Skin Thief last year was one of our Spooky Month books by Susan Palumbo.
Which was spooky.
It was spooky, but I did like Skin Thief.
We also read Witch, which is a YA novel, as part of our nostalgia book club, and we called that Spooky Month. I gave you softballs last year.
You did. It features witches, so it counts as Spooky Month. We read Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark for Spooky Month in 2022, and that was really good. So, like, we have done some Spooky Month books that I've enjoyed.
Oh yes, sorry, and I wasn't talking about this series as a whole. I meant for this year in particular.
Oh, for this year in particular, yes. Yes.
Yeah, no, I know. Like I said, I usually give you softballs. Not this time, or at least not last book.
But I did quite like this.
Good.
I think this was Lyndsie Manusos' first novel or
according
novella.
to the back.
Yeah. And I would read more from her.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Fiction Fans.
Come disagree with us. We're on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok at FictionFansPod. You can also email us at fictionfanspod@gmail.com.
If you enjoyed the episode, please rate and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And follow us wherever your podcasts live.
We also have a Patreon where you can support us and find exclusive episodes and a lot of other nonsense.
Thanks again for listening, and may your skeleton always be defeated. Bye!
Bye!